Okay, welcome everyone to our, I think it's our fifth installment of the Extramural Enrichment series. Today we have Masuku, went to school with me actually, in a grade above me. We played a little bit of rugby together, and I found out the other day that you and Ernest went to primary school together as well. I didn't know that. So, yeah, but my memory of you is a confident guy, softly spoken, gentle. But you always had a plan, and it's been wonderful to see the success you've made in your chosen field. And I think what's interesting, and we'll get into a little bit later, is you loved art from a young age, and you were obviously very creative. But you also played first team rugby. If I'm not mistaken, Sia, you went to a World Cup with touch rugby, didn't you? Represented the country after school.
Yes, I did on 3 occasions. Yeah.
There we go. So you got a lot behind your name, and I think that's, Miss Kemp and I often talk about the well-rounded boy. So much for coming online with us and chatting to us, and yeah, we can't wait to hear your story.
Again, just to echo, welcome and thank you so much for your time. We are really excited to get to hear about your journey and understand a little bit more about the industry that is graphic design and illustration and graphic novels. I'm so excited to know that there are still South Africans who create graphic novels, because I was a massive fan of Mouse as a literature student at university. So I was so excited to hear that there is something like this in South Africa. So I've certainly enjoyed hearing a little bit about this. I'm going to go through a few questions, and then I will offer the opportunity for others to ask questions. If you want to type a question into the chat section so long, you're welcome to do that, and then we'll get to those questions. But the first question from me is, can you tell us a little bit more about your time at Jeppe? Did you always have a way with words? Did you always love art, or was that something that only developed later on in your life?
My time at Jeppe was quite fun actually. But more outside the classroom than it was in the classroom for a few reasons. I enjoyed playing a lot of sports. I enjoyed being physically active. I found that it was quite a way for me to be able to express myself. And also in standard 8, grade 10, I think. Am I right? We had the opportunity to start, going down from, I think it was 11 subjects to 6. And obviously it's quite exciting. It's a year before you go senior, so everything is really cool and new. And I remember choosing, okay, we had the English, Afrikaans, and maths as standard, but I chose biology, science, and art. I chose art solely because I felt it would be easy for me, because I've got a background in this drawing. And yeah, when we first got to class, Mr. Daniels, Walter Daniels. And the first lesson, he said, "Hi, my name is Walter Daniels. I know I look weird, but if you chose art because you thought it would be easy, you were wrong." And he was right. Art was pretty hard. But I mean, I still look forward to coming to school, because we could. I was looking particularly forward to the art lessons. I was doing much better in the practical sessions than I did in the theoretical sessions. So it sort of balanced everything out for me. And obviously looking forward to after school, playing some rugby and or cricket, depending on what season it is, of course.
I think it's incredible that you say that you managed to get that balance where you found that you absolutely loved art, but you found a way to be involved in extramural activities as well, and you found your love there. Did you find that you enjoyed your sports a whole lot more? Or did you always know that art was going to be a way for you to find a career one day? Or were you not sure where you were going when you were at school?
I had absolutely no idea. However, leaving primary school and coming to Jeppe, I had this idea that I would become a successful soccer player, because I was already playing for Orlando Pirates junior team, right? And I get to Jeppe, and the surprise element is that there is no soccer at Jeppe at the time, and that was frustrating. But I mean, I chose to come to Jeppe solely because I had seen the full colors Blazers, and I thought they were the most awesome things. And doing more investigation into the school and realized the rich culture, the sports, and all that sort of stuff. But luckily, I was playing rugby at primary school. I went to Malvern Primary, by the way. I was playing rugby there, so sort of getting into rugby and letting go of soccer became almost a natural transition. So starting to playing more sports, I started realizing, well, more rugby. I started realizing, okay, maybe I won't be a soccer player, maybe I'll be a rugby player. And art was just something I'm doing as a hobby at this time. It's just writing is something I do in my own personal space and keeping it a secret. Um, it had a cathartic effect on me because, this taboo about boys not keeping journals or diaries. I actually kept one. Hello. But yeah, sort of mixing that to find different ways to channel the way I express myself, whether it's in physical activity or in a in a small room somewhere. I was lucky to have that. So yeah.
I think it's amazing that you had that means of expressing yourself, and I think it's amazing. It's even more amazing that you got to take that further outside of school. Both with your touch rugby and with your career now. I have my next question is, could you mention anyone in specific who nurtured your love for art and fiction at school?
Yeah, absolutely. On the writing side, it was definitely Mrs. Muller's creative writing classes. I remember writing a creative writing piece, and I think I took longer than all the other classmates to finish my piece. But I was actually playing with around. I was listening to a lot of a lot of Michael Jackson at the time, and there was one particular song that I enjoyed, "Dangerous," and I was putting all his lyrics in there, but disguising them, not really quoting them, but disguising them as mine. And it sounded really cool when I looked at it. It rhymed. It was so cool, and I handed it in. And when it came back with a note from Mrs. Muller saying, "Keep dreaming," but it had a nice smile there, and she gave me good marks for the piece. So, so it was kind of embarrassing and also a wake up call for me personally from an artistic expression point of view to just try and be more genuine, right? And then from a drawing point of view, it was definitely Mr. Walter Daniels. Um, he he had a saying, which I suppose the class of 2003 would recall, is nothing happens in isolation. Obviously, it went over our heads then because we weren't really concentrating in the theoretical studies. But growing up, um, it all makes sense, and it's not only in art, just in life. You can apply that in so many ways. So Walter Daniels also nurtured how I also looked at space and the object itself. So we draw a lot of still life, and he would say draw around the apple, for instance, and not the actual apple. And that really changes the dynamic and perspective as to how you look at the object and the space around it. So yeah, there were a couple and other influences at school in terms of my creative, as far as my creative career is concerned.
That's really cool. And you'll be happy to know that Ms. Muller's daughter, Mrs. Ogle, is actually one of our matric English teachers and the HOD of grade 8 and 9 English. So it's so nice that we've got her and the next generation.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, the boys are lucky. Yeah.
Very grateful. One of the coolest people I know as well. So I love that you had people who nurture both the creative writing and the illustration side. And I guess one of my favorite things about stories and storytelling is a story's ability to draw out empathy and teach people how to place themselves in someone else's shoes. Could you tell us a little bit more about your journey after high school? How on earth did you decide eventually that illustration and writing was where you wanted to be?
Okay. Actually, before I get into that answer, Bronwyn, I'm going to throw a riddle at everyone, and maybe you guys could answer in the message, or you could answer. If I can recall it correctly, it's a son and his father on their way to the son's first day well, to your son's interview in a big company. Now, in the car, the father says, well, sorry, in the car, the son's phone rings, and the father says, "You may pick that up, son." The son picks it up, and then on the other line is someone saying, "You've already got the job, son." Now, how is this possible?
How is this possible? I'm going to ask you to repeat the riddle just so that I can try wrap my brain around it again.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm making a bad job at it, but basically,
No, no.
it's a father and a son on their way to the son's first job interview in a big corporate, right? And then on their way, the son's phone rings, and the father says to the son, "You may pick it up, son." And he picks it up, the boy, and on the other side of the line is someone's voice saying, "You've already got the job, son." Now, how is that possible? Okay, so maybe you don't want to answer this now, maybe later, but the point is on perspective, because um, what that riddle actually taught me is that my first inclination is to think that on the other side of the line it could be anything like his other father or anything like that, but it's actually his mother, right? That would be the answer, and
Oh,
yeah, the whole shift in perspective in stories. So this riddle is also a story in a way, is that stories have that ability to make us not to make us look at things differently, and we all need to be looking at things in more than one possible way. Now, to answer your question, how I went from the transition from the school and leaving high school, leaving Jeppe, for me, I went to study Wits Technicon, now UJ, studied graphic design, and I was playing under 19 rugby at Wits. So rugby was still quite a serious thing for me, but it was also I was also becoming honest with myself and realizing that it's not I'm not cut out for it. And I think we need that. We need to be able to be honest with ourselves and be able to say, look, I'm not good enough yet, okay, and and keep working at it. And and I got to a point where I realized that okay, one thing I do enjoy doing is playing touch. So going through my studies as a student in graphic design at Wits Tech, really, I literally I'll go to class and make sure that my work is done and I get my marks. But soon after that, I'm belting. I'm going to touch training. And at the time I was playing Gauteng touch. So touch, I was involved in the touch space in a very big way. I was refing several games a week to make. I think then they were paying like 30 rand a game. Game would go like 20 minutes a half. So in 40 minutes, I was making like 30 rand and refing about 4 games in a night. I was making enough money and ref about 3 nights in a week. It was enough money to carry me on as a student. And it didn't occur to me that I would need to figure out how to have a career, right? I thought, okay, I think this is how I would live. I'm just going to be a student and play touch, right? But it was cool because touch afforded me a lot of opportunities. In 2015, I managed to I was selected for Junior South African side to play in the World Cup in Brisbane in 2007. Sorry, in 2005, and then in 2007 it was in Stellenbosch, um, the Senior World Cup, and then in 2011 we went to Edinburgh for the. This was my last year as a touch player, but now I was also out of studying. I had to leave studying, drop out as it were, because we didn't have the funds at home. So I started freelancing as a graphic designer, and all this time I'm just playing touch, and I'm thinking, this is just my life, right? um, and reality hit hard when we came back from Edinburgh, and we were playing a touch league game at George Lee in Santon. It was February of 2012. Um, and by the way, Tabo Mutsumi was head boy in my year in 2003. He was. I went to Scotland with him, so he's still involved in touch in a big way. But when we came back, we were playing this league game, and it was quite intense. But I could feel that my body was actually tired. I was playing a lot of touch. I wasn't getting enough rest. It was like straight from World Cup, and then we're playing league, and we're playing interprovincials. And that league game, my knee just made a loud snap. and I fell, and there was my ACL breaking in two parts. I didn't know what it was at the time, but my knee just instantly swelled, and I went for operation. And the doctor said, "Look, you've got a month. No, you've got a year, basically, in a year and several months to get into shape, but do proper rehab before coming to play again." And I said, "Okay, cool." I wanted to play again, and I did do some rehab, but it wasn't proper, and that I failed to admit to myself. And I rushed back into it, and the first game it went again. So I went back for surgery, and the Dr. Gelbart was like, "Look, stop playing touch, man. Go write a book. Go do something more constructive, you know." And look, I mean, I'd be lying to say that that was when everything changed for me in terms of, oh yes, I'm going to start making graphic novels, because then I was just lost. Honestly, I was just fearing, because I had nothing else to do. I can't do physical activity. Well, it seems like forever. The doctor's already telling me I'm definitely going to have arthritis when I'm older. And I'm like, okay, thanks. And then, what was it? And all I had left was this creative design stuff that I could conjure up. So I thought, okay, let's build a freelancing career doing graphic designs, designing logos, business cards, website, and all that sort of stuff. That that was a completely dismal venture for me. I just couldn't get anything off the ground. I was very lucky to get the odd job, like a 3-month contract in a design agency, but nothing would really stick for me. And I think it was in 2010 when there was the last time 2011, when I actually was employed, and I realized that, okay, I really need to scratch the whole book. I need a clean canvas. I need to really reevaluate my life and think about what I want to do with it. I think at that age, I'm probably like 26, 27. And my father was staying in Mpumalanga at the time, and he had a nice big yard with a chicken coop and stuff. And I went to go stay with him. I'm Soweto born and raised, by the way. So I left Soweto, went to go stay with my father, and we raised chickens. I learned how to raise chickens. It was fun, using lamps and stuff. So we used the tool shed, and we converted it into a nice place for chickens. I mean, there were hundreds of them. There were lots. And then right next to the shed, there was a chicken coop. But in the winter, so it's my first time doing this. In the chicken coop, in the winter, the chickens are dying. So we're thinking, okay, cool, maybe the lamps are not hot enough. So we start getting more lamps in there. But now the chickens are not dying from cold, now they're dying from heat. This is like, so confusing. By the time winter ends, there's a few chickens from like 300 odd, is like less than 20, right? It was like, okay, we're just going to take the ones that lay eggs and keep them as long as we can, and we're going to eat the rest. So I spent a year there in Mpumalanga, but it was away from the whole Joburg buzz, because let's face it, Joburg is constantly pushing you. Okay, if you get out of Joburg, and those of you know, staying in more rural areas, right way out Joburg, once you get out of Joburg, there's this, you know, and I had that in Mpumalanga. I mean, after spending a year there, but I also missed the buzz. You know, I missed the drive, everything, and I could see my friends on social media just having a nice time in Josie. You know, and I'm out here in the Bundu. So I called my mom up. I said, look, I want to come back to Josie. I need to start making something. I don't think I'm going to be doing farming for a very long time.
So farming isn't on your CV.
Yeah, no. Then I came back to Soweto, stayed with my mom for a while, and I thought, let me rekindle the drawing side of what I do. Started drawing again. You know, it started feeling good again. It was new. It was a new experience. It wasn't forced. I wasn't doing it for a deadline. And a chance conversation with my mother, who is an isiZulu teacher. Well, she's principal at a school now in Soweto, but she's been there since I was a toddler. And she was telling me about the shortage of books in the children's mother tongue that are coming into the school, specifically books that are written in the children's mother tongue. And it's something that I sat on, I slept on, and I thought about. It was like, okay, right now there's literally nothing that's going on, right? in my life professionally or any other way. Here's something that I could do that I actually feel quite close to. And I took all these ideas that I was drawing at the time, and luckily I had people around me at the time whom I still regard as mentors, whom I would ask so many questions, and they were very patient with me. Thank goodness. Hopefully, it's paying off for them. But they were guiding me sort of how to channel my artistic expression into something that's really cool and good and positive. Also, at the time, I went through a slump in terms of depression. Also, just not knowing what to do with my life. And as things started developing with the book, and I asked my mom, she would edit it, and I started writing, and coupled it with the drawing, and we would go back and forth. Things started developing. I thought it would be a 6-month stunt. It ended up being 2 years, and I had just spent 2 years of my life into this project. But in the end, it paid off, and we published Siyafunda isiZulu in 2016 August, and that completely changed the course of my life forever, I guess.
I think it's so incredible that from a conversation with your mom, you managed to create Siyafunda, which is something that is still fulfilling such a need. And I don't think it's a need that's going to kind of run out anytime soon. I see Brendan is presenting the cover page and the illustration of Siyafunda. I don't know if you can see it on your screen as well.
It hasn't popped up. It hasn't popped up.
Okay. Yeah, it's I mean, and you did the cover illustration as well, am I right?
Yes. Actually, the funny story about cover illustrations, Siyafunda, I mean, the spider just had such an imposing sort of, figure. It was such an imposing figure when I looked at it, and I thought, okay, cool, let's just go with it. And since then, for me, when I actually make books, they start with the book cover, and then I get into the story. So it's almost like the story needs to illustrate or tell what the cover is saying. I hope it's just an easier way to actually sell the story as soon as you look at it before you open the book.
It's funny because they always say don't judge a book by its cover, and yet when I walk into a bookstore, the first thing I do is pick up the cover and go, So I'm so glad to hear that you're putting that saying to shame, because I do disagree with it in a literal sense. You have to pick the book based on its cover.
You and me both. I think we're all humans. We first look at something, and if it looks appealing to our eyes, then we investigate a lot more. So yeah, I've always felt that you do judge a book by its cover, but having said that, you still go in and investigate, right? You don't neglect it because you don't like the cover. So yeah.
100%. I have a question related to Siyafunda and the whole project. So you said, you anticipated it being 6 months, and then it actually took 2 years. How did you overcome obstacles such as funding? Because I know in the industry, for any author or illustrator to be published, it takes a lot of funding, and you really have to know people. So how did you overcome those obstacles?
I was very lucky, Bronwyn. My approach to publishing has been unconventional, to be honest. I've been looking at opportunities where they are and try to seize them, And I suppose what made me see the opportunities was that I always came prepared, doing the work beforehand and doing it in my own space and being happy about it. Just being happy that the work is done, and then making sure that, okay, how do we share it with the world? So publishing Siyafunda was a bit like that, where I thought it would take me 6 months to write, illustrate, get it edited, and get funding and donate books to the school. And then when June came in 2015, I had met my personal goal in terms of finishing the book on time, but I didn't have the money. And like I said, luckily I had people around me whom I'm so happy to call mentors and friends whom I would go to and say, look, I'm stuck with this thing. How do you know people? Do you know people I can talk to? Companies? And when I say friends, I mean these are people who were were actually directors and companies. So it was easy to say, but such and such is a CEO of, could you just speak to him and maybe arrange a meeting, right? And they would do that, and also they would show me how to present the idea so that it's worth like giving time for a busy person. But that went on for like a year. I was seeing so many people. I was getting rejection after rejection, and with every big project, and I still face that now. No matter how cool the project is, no matter how big it is, even if you're playing, let's say you're playing hockey or rugby or water polo for the whole season, there'll come a time where the team or the individual hits a wall, or they just get stuck, and it feels like we're not going forward. We're not getting any sort of momentum. And sometimes it's good to go away, to let it go. And that's what happened to me a few times, maybe 3 times, I think. And I remember there were times where I would even want to curse the people who convinced me that it was a good idea to begin with, right? But you go through those things. But the point is to not give up, right? And yeah, in 2016, the whole crowdfunding idea came along. It was very new to me, but I researched it and I saw that it's big overseas, especially in the UK or in Europe. Kickstarter and all that sort of stuff are out there. But I couldn't find a platform I could resonate with because they were all selling in dollars. And I stumbled upon thunderfund.co.za, and they were the South African crowdfunding platform, and you could sell in rands. And honestly, it was in June when it started. I selected the campaign to be a 30-day campaign, and it's a lot of work. It's about getting people, people who have a lot of followers. You bargain with them, you form teams, and you give them incentives to share with their followers, right? So there's a lot that goes into it tactically. But in 30 days, I had to raise a minimum of 25,000 Rand to publish Siyafunda isiZulu. And then my ultimate goal was 150,000 Rand. Now, the rule is if you don't reach 25,000 Rand within 30 days, then it goes back to the funders and it's listed as misunderstood or something. It's basically failed. And we got to day 25. And we were sitting on like 23,000 Rand. And by the time we got to 30 days, we were on 25,000 Rand. So I called them. I said, Thunderfund, I need an extension.
Oh, sorry,
okay,
Sia,
fine, we'll give you another 30 days. And then I managed to get an article written.
We lost you for a few seconds. Sorry, were you saying that you asked for an extension?
Okay. I asked for an extension, yes. So I called Thunderfund. This is the wall that I hit at the time, right? It was a time where I could just give in, or I just called the facilitators, like, can we have an extension? They gave me an extra 30 days. And I managed to get, through connections, I managed to get an article written on the Daily Maverick. It somehow reached the Cote d'Ivoire. No, not Cote d'Ivoire. The DRC. And I remember getting a call from the DRC and someone saying, look, I'm willing to fly there tomorrow if you are able to make time. And I said, okay, cool. Let's meet in Soweto. It's Sakumzi. And Rodney Quick was there quickly. We sat down and he started ordering some wine. And I said, look, I've got work to do, man. Like, you flew from the DRC just to have wine? He's like, no, relax. I've already put in 150,000 Rand into your campaign. Let's celebrate. And they were like, yeah, and these things happen, right? It's just about being prepared and just being stubborn and making sure that you see the project or the assignment through right till the end. So yeah, that's pretty much how I've been unconventional in my ways of publishing.
I think there's so much inspiration to draw from that, because I think often it's very easy to give up on a dream, and I'm so happy to hear that you were honest with yourself and you were real with yourself, and you took those moments to step back. And what my writing lecturer Craig Higginson always used to say, let the coffee get cold. Sometimes you can't appreciate a good cup of coffee until you've had a sip of that really really nasty coffee that's been sitting on the desk for too long. So I'm really glad to hear that you let the coffee get cold and then you jump right back in. And the illustrations, I don't know, Brendan was he put up some of the illustrations from your graphic novel. How do you create those? Do you create those online, or they're absolutely exquisite?
Well, thank you. Well, the Siyafunda Zulu was done using printmaking, using lino print. So if there are artists who are listening to this, lino print is basically using lino cutting tools to cut on a linoleum mat, and you're bringing out the images by raising it, and then you put paint or ink on it, and then you put it on the paper to print out the inverse version. So the trick is that if you're gonna, like you see in the word ambulance, if you look on your rear view mirror, it reads normally left to right. But how it's actually designed, it's done inversely for that reason, right? So lino printmaking has that aspect to it. So it takes longer, it's expensive, but it comes out quality. But then for the graphic novels, recently I've been working digitally. In 2016, right after having a successful crowdfunding campaign, I started investing more in my tools. I bought myself a brand new Wacom Cintiq 13-inch screen, which I'm still using today. And look, it's paid itself off in a lot of ways, and I'm grateful for that. So what it is, it's literally like a tablet, and you illustrate on the screen as if it were paper. But the advantage of that is that you are able to erase things and all this sort of stuff, unlike on paper. Of course, if you're using an eraser on paper, you can do that. But yeah, digital is just a quicker thing. That's the upside. The downside is that you cannot smell the paint. So that's basically.
And there's something about that, hey, that tangible art.
You gotta smell the paint. Yeah.
So do you still dabble in actual lino printing, or are you only working digitally?
I've been working digitally. I've been looking forward to well, okay. I'm spilling the beans. I've been working on the sort of the follow-up to Siyafunda Isizulu, and I want to keep the whole artistic feel to it, but it's going to be more in a story form and stuff. And the big dream is to get it animated eventually. Into short films that children can enjoy. So yeah, that's I could go printmaking there, or I could use any other art tools. Now, I was also considering gouache paints and acrylic and stuff. So yeah, I'm playing around with how I'm going to do that from an artistic point of view. But the story is basically there, and it's a matter of how I pull it off.
I think that's so exciting. I'm excited to hear more about the follow-up to Siyafunda. But before we speak about that, I have a few more questions regarding that. So obviously, having done the illustration and some of the writing, what do you prefer? Do you enjoy writing more, or do you enjoy illustrating more?
I've got days when I enjoy writing. I've got days when I enjoy illustrating. I've got days when I don't enjoy either. I've got days when I enjoy both. I'm very fortunate right now to be in a position where I'm able to do both of them. So I'm able to split my days into two halves. The first half of the day, put in a few hours of concentrated writing, good or bad, and then the later half of the day, and sometimes it goes on to the later in the evening. I draw, I have fun, I draw, I make comics. So yeah, I know that I'm lucky to be in a position right now where I can have that sort of time, and that inspiration is there, because there'll come a time where I'm just stuck. So I try to use this time as much as I can. Yeah.
I think there's pressure to kind of be productive for people, and I'm so happy to hear that you haven't felt the pressure as a negative thing, but it's actually been more of an opportunity for you. I know time can often be a luxury and an indulgence, so I'm so happy to hear that you've really enjoyed having this time to work on both.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, for me, I really feel fortunate. I don't take it lightly. and for me, it's always giving it my best shot, whether it's doing it to share with the public or it's doing it just to keep for myself. Because I do have a lot of stuff that I keep for myself, and maybe one day they'll see the light of day, maybe they won't, but it's always just giving it my best shot and enjoying the process.
Yeah, just keeping the finger on the pulse, and keep practicing. I think it's really cool that you're actively involved in creating work. You've kind of touched on what I was going to ask as my next question, which really just dealt with the social agenda of your work and being able to provide more access to learners for the opportunity to learn in their mother tongue. And your ultimate dreams for your work, I know you've mentioned having the follow-up to Siyafunda. What are your hopes? What do you want to achieve in the next few years?
There is quite a lot. But I am careful with that because when you try and stay in the space you're in the moment, when I try and space in the moment, it's much easier for me to actually get work done than when I try and look at this big goal in 3 years' time, and it can become scary. But I do hope to see more Mavenda writing in their mother tongue, in Venda. The Tswana people writing in Setswana, the Swati people writing in Seswati, and so on. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of people not writing in their mother tongue. Okay, and not everyone must do that, but we need more people in the space who are doing that, because the way I see it, I mean, all languages are important tools. I mean, English is such an important tool. We are using it right now to communicate. So when I see an author who's just like me, who's black, who's Zulu speaking, who grew up speaking isiZulu, but writes in English, I actually do wonder, because I mean, when you write in a different language, you actually have to go into their culture, and you're confined within their dynamics. And for instance, a good example would be if we're all if there's a meeting at home and families have gathered, and my uncle comes to me as a little boy. He comes to me and says, "Hey, Siya," he says, "Siya, hambo begindlebe laphaya." Now, he's basically instructing me to go listen there. But how do you say hambo begindlebe laphaya without literally translating it and sounding awkward? Because in English it says, "Go and put an ear there," right? But it still sounds strange, right? So there are nuances in writing in your own language which are very important, and language being a carrier of history, we all need to be aware of the power we have within our own languages. So I hope to see a lot of people doing that in the future. On a personal level, I just hope I'm still around to be able to share what I do. You never know. You appreciate each moment as it comes. You appreciate each day. You appreciate the people you're around. Just for us having this conversation right now, it's like the most important thing right now, right? So for me, it's if I'm around tomorrow to make art, thank you. But right now, it's just taking things a step at a time.
What a cool approach to life. I think I need that reminder every now and then. My to-do list reaches into next week, and I think you're so right. If we can just be grateful for what's right in front of us, that's profound. Question, we're getting into language, and it's something I'm very passionate about. So there's a project that is ongoing in Cape Town, and it's kind of spreading to other places in South Africa, called translanguaging, where we're taking pieces of Shakespeare's work and we are not translating them, but translanguaging them to kind of stay true to Shakespeare's meaning and still resonate with people who speak other languages. So we've had some really exciting stuff happen. And this whole project really brought to my attention how at a disadvantage I am, because the only language I can think in is English. So I've got a bit of a trippy question coming for you. It's actually a 3-part question. The first part is, how many South African languages can you speak?
I can speak reasonably well in English and isiZulu. My Setswana and and Istodzi are also okay. But there was a time when my Chitonga was actually picking up because I had friends and I was close to them and I was really forcing them to speak Chitonga to me. So I was starting to learn that. But then we stopped hanging around so much. So I lost the touch. So I would go with two and two possible with Setswana and what is the other one? And Setsotsi. But I mean, it really just depends on where I am. If I'm with Setswana speaking people, I'll hear exactly what they're saying and I'll respond and we'll have a normal conversation.
That's very, very cool. I'm very jealous. I'm slowly learning Zulu, but slowly. I don't practice enough. I'm not around people who speak it enough. It's a problem in my life. The next of that question is, which language do you think in?
It's a very good question, Brandon. Very difficult to answer that. I would say it depends on where I'm at and who I'm relating to at the time. Now, if I had to think of anything, it'll be in English, okay, because of our discussion now. But I can recall instances when I've thought in isiZulu and I've thought in Isitsotsi, where when I've thought in pictures only. So yeah.
And language or languages that you dream in, or is that also in pictures?
Yeah, I think similar. Yeah, in pictures, and I've dreamt in color. So
that's amazing. I can't tell you if I dream in color or not.
Yeah, well, I do remember my dreams. I know a lot of people say they don't, but I do remember my dreams when I wake up and I can recall what happened. And sometimes I'm able to write them down. And some of them creep into my work. So if you bought any of my books, you might by chance stumble upon them. But yeah, I think in terms of thinking or dreaming, it can vary from language to image to even color. I don't know if there's even a possibility of smelling in a dream. I don't know, but yeah.
I'm sure there is. Our brains are absolutely magical.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm really interested in what you've spoken about in terms of, you can't directly translate from another language to English, and I think you've highlighted something that I've been trying to wrap my brain around for so long, and that really is just understanding the value of the context of the language and the culture of the language and the history of the language. So I'm really grateful for what you said. It's really resonated with me. So thank you for that. And I'm finishing off, and I know there's quite a few questions that have popped up in the chat. So my second last question for you is, which is your favorite story, childhood or otherwise?
Childhood, definitely Jafta and the wedding. I wouldn't. It's my favorite story because of the sentimental part of it. Okay, because I was lucky. I mean, my mom has been a teacher, so I was lucky to grow up in a home where there are books. However, these books were mostly in English. There were very few. I remember I had Mashambi Sane and some of the other ones in Vernac or in indigenous languages, but most of them were still in English. But Japta the Wedding was different because it wasn't like reading Noddy and here's this toy kid who's in snow and he's got blue eyes or whatever, and it's kind of tricky to relate to it. But then this Japta, the scenes is just all kids who look like me. They're all black kids with hair like mine, and the whole family, they live in an area that I've seen before, in a rural area, and my gran would read the story aloud to me and my sister, and just from a pictorial point of view, it stuck with me, and that story will never leave my mind as far as I can recall in terms of stories I've read as a child. But now recently, I love Watchmen by Ellen Moore, the graphic novel.
Yes.
I haven't watched the new adaptation in terms of the series, but I hear some good reviews on it. But it's very difficult because the literature work is so good. It's so difficult to move on to the digital screen. But I'll give it a shot. I also love Mouse. You mentioned Mouse, by Alt Spiegelman. Yeah, that also changed how I saw stories being told. Okay, Alt Spiegelman, for you guys who are not who don't know him, is a writer and illustrator. And he wrote this book, Mouse, which basically is a story about his parents and how they survived the
Holocaust.
the war, the Holocaust. That's it. Thank you. So, but just how he captures reality and just brings it so close to you in a cool way, that was amazing to me. In terms of novels, I enjoyed Art and the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I read it a couple of years ago by Robert Pirsig. Very more philosophical stuff, but things that are very thought-provoking as well. And then recently I've also read Carlos Castaneda's series with Don Juan and stuff. Also quite intriguing stuff. But yeah, I like to go through different books depending on where I am at the time. I'm constantly reading graphic novels, but every now and then I'll break and go back into novels. So yeah.
I'm glad to hear that it's there's some fiction and some non-fiction in the mix, and some philosophy. I've never heard of any kind of artist who hasn't filled their life with some kind of philosophy. So
Yeah.
it's nice to hear the variety there. The last question from me, and then we'll move on to some of the questions from others, is what advice would you have for young storytellers at Jeppe or young artists?
Firstly, I remember one of my favorite authors is Maurice Sendak, I think, if I'm pronouncing his name right. He wrote Into the Wild. I think that was the book. Yeah, they were interviewing him and asking him what advice does he have for storytellers, especially those who are writing for kids. And he said, tell them the truth. You know, the kids deserve to hear the truth. And I would take that further. It's like, yeah, let's tell our truth in stories. Let's be sincere, but also let's be responsible with the truth. You know.
Oh, Sia, sorry, we're losing you. We've got some patchiness. Sorry, we lost you. I don't know if you can hear me. We lost you for the last few minutes of what you were saying. Let me just, I think it was
I can hear you, okay.
Tell your truth. Sorry, we lost the last few
minutes. Okay. Let me know once you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, do you hear me okay now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, super. So yeah, I do believe that storytellers, we are all storytellers. Okay, great. We are all storytellers, and when we tell our stories, let's tell our truth, let's be sincere, but also let's be responsible with the truth. Let's be responsible with the stories we tell, because we want to create stories that are healing people and not poisoning them. Yeah.
Awesome. Tell your truth and be honest with yourself. Those are two things that I'm definitely going to take away from this conversation. Ask the questions if you're happy to stick around for a few minutes.
I'm happy to do that. Thank you. Cool. Thanks for listening.
So just from my side, on behalf of the school, I don't know if the school says this to you enough, but you know, we're exceptionally proud of you, and you're a great ambassador for Jeppe. And I think your story is a great one. It didn't always come easy for you, and you deserve the success you're experiencing now. And I hope that this is the start of us engaging with you a little bit more. And we hope to see you come visit us when you can. But I know that you've been a massive inspiration for the boys today. So thanks a lot from my side.
Thank you, Brendan. I really appreciate this time to be able to share with everyone who's been listening. And so happy to be a Jeppe old boy. And I would love to find ways for us to work together in the future somehow.